So the first step for our Gustav Klimt trees is to handle the background, and we are going to be using the sponge background technique with watercolor paper and tempera paint and some sponges that I cut into fourths. What is important for this step is what time of day you would like the background of your tree to be in. Did you cover your entire paper, and did you use all of the paint on your sponge? Sponges are really good at soaking up paint, so make sure that you squeeze all the paint out of it so we don't waste any paint. Your paint color choices today depend on what time of day you would like your background to be. So whatever's behind your tree is going to tell you if it's nighttime, you're going to get blues, purples, and a little bit of white. If you want it to be sunset or sunrise, I'll give you red, orange, yellow, and maybe a little bit of pink. Or if you want it during the day, I'll give you some light blue and some white for clouds. All right, let's jump in. My paper is going to be a lot smaller than yours just for this example. In this example, I wanted it to be nighttime, so I used purples and blues. But in the example I'm going to show you in just a minute, I'm going to get some sunset colors. Make sure to flip your paper over, write your name on the back, your grade if you're in 4th grade, and then your teacher's name. So your homeroom teacher name goes on the other side. And now we're ready to get started. When you're using the sponge technique, you want to get a damp sponge, not a wet sponge, but a damp one, and we're going to load up our colors. It's easiest to start with lighter colors first. We could always darken the lighter ones later. It's a lot easier to start with a lighter color than it is to start with a darker color and try to lighten it up, because that's not going to work. Make sure that you tap your sponge and you're not sliding it along your paper. We really want to make it look like it has texture in the background without being too busy. So we're going to tap our sponge over and over and over again. And your arm might start to hurt, but go ahead and just keep going. I'm going to add my lightest colors, like I said, first, because those darker colors are really going to take advantage and take over my paper if I add them too soon. So now I'm ready for my darker colors. I'm going to tap them a couple times on my palette first, and you see how that red, orange is kind of taken over. So just be really careful when you pull in your dark colors. You don't want to overshadow your light colors. And then you'll just end up with a paper that's all one color. And the whole point is to get this really cool texture fade. So once you cover your entire paper, you want to squeeze out your sponge, make sure you get all the paint so we don't waste any paint, and get all the way to the edges of your paper. You don't want to have any open white spaces. I kind of went back in with my yellow, but it didn't work super well because once that color is already dark, it pretty much stays dark. Once you're done, we're going to hold it like a pizza and bring it to the drying rack. Next step is part 2, where we're going to draw our tree outline and then paint it brown. For this next step, I'm going to show you 4 examples of 4 different tree types that you can make today. And we're going to start each of them, no matter which type you do, with this V shape at the bottom. So this will be the trunk of your tree. You could call it a Y shape or a V shape. Now I'm coloring it in with my black marker, but we're going to be painting over it with brown paint, so you don't actually have to color it in when you're drawing it. This is just kind of to show you. I'll have this on the board for you guys to be able to see the different types of tree, but in every one of these corners, I'm going to show you. Now, you're only going to do one of these. This is just an example, so you're going to pick one of these, and it'll go on the backgrounds, the sponge backgrounds that we did last week. So for this one, I'm going to do a curly shaped tree. It'll look very cartoonish, but I'm going to be using some swirl lines at the end of every branch. Notice how it is always thickest closer to the tree trunk, and it gets thinner the further out. So we're going to start with these 2. I'm going to show you each one. We're going to make 2 of these branches that are stemming off of the Y-shaped tree trunk that we did. This example is a zigzag line. So notice how I'm making them double walled so that I could paint the inside. This one is going to be a curly Q, so a very, very wavy line, but still it is wider, closer to the bottom, and skinnier, closer to the top. But it is very curly all the way around. It needs to be double lined. Okay. We're only working with the 2 largest base branches of our tree. Thickest closer. This one is just going to be a regular wavy line. This one is my favorite. It is also the easiest to do, and it looks really good. It looks the most realistic. So now we get to add the branches. You could do your branches anywhere. You can make your branches have branches, but you're still following that technique of thicker closer to your base of your tree trunk and thinner towards the end of your branch, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and add all the branches I want for this one. Remember to take up space on your paper. You want your tree to fit on your paper. You don't want it to look like you've got a tiny tree with a big paper. Fill your space. Fill your format. However big your paper is, we need to fill it up. The zigzag tree is made with zigzag lines. The curlicue tree, we're just gonna do some branches off of this. We're going to be putting all about me things around these branches, on the sides of these branches, even some you could put inside the tree trunk, like your name or words that describe you, affirmations that you use, hobbies you like to play. We're going to draw images such as if you like basketball, you would draw a basketball somewhere around or on your tree. And make sure to fill in any open areas. So here, I'm going to show you how I did it. This is going to be a little bit more sped up. We're going to use ebony pencils today. These are Prismacolor ebony pencils, and they do draw a lot darker, so just be careful. So right here, I'm outlining my zigzag lines. I don't have to erase all of those lines because, again, I'm going to be going over this with some brown paint. So this is just one of my examples. So I did the zigzag tree design on this example. It is always thicker the closer it is to the base of our tree, and thinner as it goes out. Okay, we're going to be using some Crayola brown colors and a flat-headed paintbrush. So I'm going to show you different ways to paint with this paintbrush. You do have the option of grabbing a smaller paintbrush if you would like. The smaller paintbrushes are in the back of the room, so if you're done with the big paintbrush, make sure you wash it off in the sink really well. Make sure to use your fingers and get all of that paint out before you switch it out with one of the paintbrushes in the back. We will have to be creating another second layer of paint on top of this. The first layer doesn't always cover it. We're going to have to wait for all of this to dry before doing our second coat of paint. So we might have to do our first layer today and our second layer next class period. So this is the end of this one, and I'm going to show you one more example with a different colored background and a different type of tree, but it is sped up all the way. So this is a wavy tree that we learned in the beginning. Remember, thicker at the bottom, skinnier towards the edge. This is my favorite one to draw. It was the easiest one to draw and the one that looks the most like a regular tree. But notice how my pinky is kind of giving my hand some stability. Anytime you're painting, you really want to have something that's anchoring your hand. So my pinky was what was holding my hand to the paper, and it kind of guided me as I was painting. It looks kind of difficult, but if you want to try it. I'm almost done with this example, but just some things to remember today. Try to make your tree take up most of your paper. You can see in this example, I've got room to put all about me things around my tree and inside my branches. I've got plenty of room, so just don't forget, you do want it to take up a lot of space on your paper. When you're finished, we'll put it on the drying rack so that it can dry for next week, and then possibly do a second coat next week. I did a second coat in this video. You can see my paper wasn't completely dry yet, so I do have some spaces where my paint rubbed off, but we're going to wait a whole week before we do our second coat. So for step 3, here are the materials you get to use, and this is the checklist of things you have to have on your paper for you to get the perfect grade. So for the last part, here is just a sped up video of me adding things about myself to my All About Me tree. And you can get started, but if you want to watch the beginning of this video just to kind of see how I'm using the materials and gluing things on, you can watch this part. I will say, if you're using the gems that I have on the back table, I have some low temperature hot glue guns that will be plugged in near the wall for you to use, but you only need them for the gems if you decide to use gems on your paper. Here is my finished example, and this has been Gustav Klimt inspired All About Me trees.